most significant voice in Black America. This is the Roland Martin Show on the Empowerment Radio Network.
Good morning, community listeners. This is Cleo Monago, guest host here on the Roland Martin Show here in Washington, D.C. on the Empowerment Radio Network. Some of you did hear yesterday's show, apparently, because all of my social media communications were quite hot yesterday regarding people's perspective on the show. So I'm glad you're here with us. Today, we're going to be talking to Dr. Umar Johnson again, having some follow-up discussion, mostly inspired comments that occurred yesterday that we could not address because it was literally 10 minutes before the show ended when he raised some issues or some more questions that he had for me or the issues that he wanted to raise. So we're going to let that happen. We're going to reconnect in a moment. But first of all, good morning. Welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here. We already have callers lined up to talk to us. So I expect it to be a very interesting show again. But I really want to stress to people that are calling that it's important that we communicate and that we listen to each other. And one thing that's going to be difficult to allow is just a tangential monologue where people are just going off and meandering. That doesn't help in terms of education and people learning from these interactions. So do your best to just be focused and ask questions. You know, if you have questions of myself or the doctor, ask questions that you have so we can make things clear and clarify. But venting or speech about opinions that are just an opinion and that's it. Opinions are cool. We don't have no problem with people having opinions, but they must be relevant to the topic. They must be relevant to what's been discussed and not a tangent that's really not relevant to what's going on here. Because those will be cut short because so many people are calling and we want to make sure that everybody as possible is heard in the short amount of time that we have this radio space. But again, welcome. Good morning. This is Cleo Monago, guest hosting for Roland Martin here on the Roland Martin Show on the Empowerment Radio Network. And those of you who haven't called in yet, you can do so at 888-669-2281, 888-669-2281. After we have our discussion with Dr. Umar, we're also going to be having another guest on the show to talk about an important issue, which I'll make clear in a moment. But her name is Monique Presley. She's an attorney and an analyst here in Washington, D.C. She's the head of Presley Firm, and she's going to talk to us about black women, the reports that black women are likely the women who are most likely to be single, supposedly up to 60 to 70% according to estimates. And she's going to give us her perspective on why that might be the case according to reports about women and their destiny regarding relationships. So that's also come up on the show, and we're glad to hear your voice on that issue regarding black women and the allegation that most will wind up single more than any other woman. So prepare for a fun discussion, a whirlwind of ideas, and likely some passion, because the issues that we discuss here on the Roland Martin Show tend to be issues that strike passion in people. So I'm told that the doctor is on the line, and we will bring in Mr. and Dr. Umar Johnson any moment now. Are you with us? Dr. Johnson?
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Good to hear from you again. Well, as you know, as we were talking yesterday, we had to end the show because everything has a beginning and everything has an end, and we did have to finally end. And near the end, you raised some issues and you had some questions, and I thought they were important to answer, but I couldn't do it in 7 minutes, particularly being that they were so nuanced, the questions that you had. But I want to just preface the conversation for people who are joining us for the first time, who didn't hear the conversation yesterday. Listeners, I heard about Dr. Umar Johnson's school that he's developing and conceiving and raising money for and wanting to work with our boys, with black boys in this country, and create a better opportunity for empowerment, self-actualization and conceptualization and community and historical knowledge and different things to help them develop more and not be pathologized but affirmed as black young people. And he's developing a school. And what's the name of that school again, Dr. Johnson?
The Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey RBG International Leadership Academy.
That's the name of the school, and it sounds like a very impressive project. And as we talked about, it's going to focus on boys and helping boys have a better experience as young black people in this country. So that was the driving force. I heard about his school on some video, which I don't remember the source anymore, but I was very moved by what sounded like a great idea and something that black men, or black boys, I should say, really need. And I know that millions of people listen to this show, and Mr. Martin has a large audience, and I thought it was a good idea for that audience to hear about this project. Because from my perspective, a lot of projects that have such an aim that's specifically for black people, and to change the tide in terms of internalized oppression and some of the dysfunctions that come from living in a race, they don't get a lot of press or enough platform for me. So I want to bring in this school and let him talk about it. And also, one of the things that came up that I learned more about through feedback from people who heard that we were going to have the show was some so-called controversial issues or concerns that were controversial that some people had. And the issue was, there was many issues, but the first issue that we talked about yesterday that we took off on, I framed it as his concerns around the feminization of black boys, masculinity concerns, and then he said that was issue was relevant to homosexuality, and we went from there. And also, Doctor, before we get going, there's lots of people already on the phone, and there were several people who complained about not being able to get in and not being able to bring their voice, and we want to make sure we do better with that today. So before we get into the phone calls, though, I want to hear from you. What, a break? Are we going to a break now? Yes, it sounds like we're going to a break. So we'll be back in a moment. We're here on the Roland Martin Show on the Empowerment Radio Network. Call us at 888-669-2281.
Global news from a trusted source. This is the Roland Martin Show on the Empowerment Radio Network.
Hello, everyone. We're back again on the Roland Martin Show with guest host Cleo Monago, with our first part of this morning back with Dr. Umar Johnson and who are waiting to have conversation with us. And we're going to get to you quickly, but I want to hear some welcome words from the doctor first, and then we're going to answer some of these calls. And of course, he and I also will be in dialogue. Again, good morning, doctor.
Good morning, sir. What I wanted to do briefly was just let the callers know, the listening audience know who I was, because I know you guys have a large audience and many of them may not be familiar with me or my work. So for the sake of that, I wanted folks to understand that I'm a doctor of clinical psychology, certified school psychologist, as well as a principal child therapist for over 20 years. I'm author of the book Psychoacademic Holocaust, The Special Education and ADHD Wars Against Black Boys, which is the only book in existence that teaches black parents how to fight back against special education and ADHD the right way and the legal way. I also host the free Black Parent Teleconference every Tuesday morning. If anyone in the listening audience ever has a question in a situation and you don't know how to solve it with regard to our sons or our daughters' education or mental health, you can call in. It's every Tuesday, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if anyone needs the call-in number, you can text my personal cell phone number at 215-989-9858. 215-989-9858, and I can be reached at drumarjohnson.com. And I'm also working on a trip to Africa this summer, group trip, as well as a historically black college tour, Pan-African boot camp for 11 to 17-year-old black boys. So if you're interested in any of that, you can reach me at drumarjohnson.com. You can text me on the phone. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Umar Johnson.
Thank you, Doctor. What we're going to do, since we have a little bit of time, is go into some of these phone calls, and of course that will likely spark some dialogue with you and I as well. But we're going to go an Ishmael in New Jersey. Is he there? Good morning. Ishmael, are you there?
Mr. Johnson, I'm calling this morning because I had listened to the conversation yesterday between yourself, Dr. Johnson, and Mr. Monago. First, I'd like to say that I am a professional, black, same-gender-loving black man. And my question really is directed, or my comment is really directed to Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson, I was a little appalled that someone who purports to be a clinical psychologist and who was licensed in any state in the United States would have behaved as you did on the phone yesterday. there are many other black psychologists, black mental health therapists, black psychiatrists who do not agree with you and who understand that there is a price tag to your sale of homo insecurity. I feel that what you are preaching is an affront to black peoples everywhere. And I believe that you have done great damage to your school, unfortunately, which I agreed with in premise, but now I have serious concerns about its leadership.
Ishmael, when you say, can you hear me, Ishmael?
Yes.
Okay. When you say that there were some specific concerns that you had regarding some issues he raised, could you be specific?
Yes. I think that the science of sexology has a long history. And to reference DSM, which was created during a time when there were so few black physicians, black mental health therapists in the United States, is completely disingenuous. And I agreed with Dr. Umar that voting is not scientific, but I would say that his rhetoric is not scientific either. Homosexuality existed before DSM. But more than that, I was just looking at Dr. Johnson's process. I just can't understand how someone that represents himself as he does can actually practice. He should be brought before a state licensure board. And I would have serious doubts to bring any one of my family members to be under his care.
Thank you, Ishmael. That's pretty deep. You have a comment, Doctor?
May I respond?
Of course.
Okay, and it's my sincere hope that every caller we have isn't calling about homosexuality, because there's a lot more going on in the black homosexuality. I would first say that I respect the brother's opinion. He has a right to it. But I want to reiterate my position. I believe, and I will die with the belief, that marriage and romance is something that is only to be practiced between a black man and a black woman, that the only true love can be heterosexual love, that men were put here to be with women, that women were put here to be with men. Although I do not advocate hurt nor harm to any of our sexually confused brothers and sisters, I am heterosexual, and that is the only union that I will ever recognize. Now, if that means individuals are going to attempt to undermine my expertise or assassinate my character, I am very well prepared to deal with that. But I cannot be bullied or intimidated away from my position. And just as he said, psychologists who don't agree with me, there's also a lot of psychologists who do agree with me. But many of them are not allowed to speak their mind, because with the ascendancy of the homosexual agenda and the power that has been placed within that movement and the support that it has received from the top politician in this country right up to the house of the president himself, who's actually discussing today conversion therapy for children. There's a movement growing in this country that does agree with Dr. Johnson that many of our children are being propagated and indoctrinated into the lifestyle. And there are psychologists, not myself, but there are other psychologists who are putting forth a program of conversion therapy that looks into the causes and the triggers of homosexuality, and they believe that they can reverse it. But President Obama, along with the LGBT movement, wants to eliminate any type of conversion therapy whatsoever. The question is this: if they converted out of that particular orientation, why not allow the conversion therapy to take place? If it's not going to work, why not allow it? It's because people do know that individuals are not born that way. And I don't have an issue with
Dr.
him.
Johnson.
I don't have an issue with you.
Dr. Johnson.
Hold on,
but I
Dr.
have an
Johnson.
issue
Johnson.
with...
Hold on, because I think you made your point clear in one while and want to hear from
I know,
people.
but let me say this, my brother.
Were you going to be quick,
I
man?
understand. Let me say this. No, stay with me. You allowed him to express himself fully, my brother. If
Right.
you're going to let the callers take more time than necessary to express themselves, I ask for the same right. I don't mind if you cut me short. Do the same thing for your callers. But don't let them go long and then cut me short. That's not
Brother, look, let me tell you something, man. I'm going to do the show the way I do the show. I have no reason to cut you off, except when it comes to time. When it comes to time, I have to control time because the show has a beginning and an end, and we have a lot to cover. And I want you to have as much time as you can to talk is important, but we're going to hear from other people too.
You're not going to let me express my full point. Don't let your callers express their.
I'm going to do what I think is necessary to do, Doctor. You want to respond, Ishmael?
And I'm going to do what I think is necessary.
Ishmael,
and the next time you cut me after allowing a caller to have a long dialogue, I'm just going to hang up and remove myself.
Ishmael,
if you can't be fair, there will be no conversation.
What you have to say to the doctor?
Dr. Johnson, there are heterosexualities, plural, and there are homosexualities, plural. I'm not speaking to you about...
Is this the same caller?
Yes, it is.
Is this the same caller? I'm just trying to clarify.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'm speaking to you about your process of the...
Why is he still on the phone? He already spoke, Cleo.
With any black people.
Cleo.
The way you are dialoguing with
Omar, hey man, look. I guess you don't listen to this show even when Roland does it. People get to talk, man.
Are you serious, Cleo, are you serious? You didn't let me finish my point. But you brought him.
Come on, man! You got to stop trying to control the show. You said a lot, Cleo, and I think you were clear.
Cleo, you're not being fair, Cleo. You cut me off to let him talk again after he already spoke.
Omar,
are you serious?
Do you want to be on this show? Because you want to get off? That's cool.
Move to a new caller, Cleo. Cleo, move to a new caller, my brother.
Ishmael, finish your thought.
To let him talk again.
Finish your thought, Ishmael.
Okay.
Excuse me, doctor.
My thoughts were that there are, and I said this and I'll be clear again, there are heterosexualities and there are homosexualities, Dr. Johnson. But I wasn't referring to any of that. I was referring to your process as a licensed therapist or so-called licensed therapist in a public forum. And I have questions about your clinical competence.
Okay, Ishmael.
Your clinical competence.
Ishmael.
Talking to any black people.
Ishmael, that's a similar point that you very clearly made earlier, and I want to make sure that's already been said, and I'm glad you called, and thank you for your perspective this morning.
Thank you.
I appreciate the call. Who's our next caller? All right. We have several people here that are waiting to talk. I think we're going to talk to John Warren. Is that our next caller? Hello? Are you with us? Good morning. Are you with us now?
Hello.
Hi. Is this John? Is this John?
Yes, this is John speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you, John. I hear you just fine. Good morning.
Okay. Basically, my comment is very brief. I really admire what Dr. Omar is doing. I think that it takes a great deal of courage to bring forth his argument. His argument is very strong, and I think in reality, we're living in a time now where people are constantly promoting this homosexual agenda. And
sorry, brother John, we have to go to a break. We're going to a break. I'm sorry, it's not. Yes, we have to, at some point we have to go to break, so we have to go to break now, and we'll be back. This is the Roland Martin Show with guest host Cleo Monago. Good morning. As I said, we're here on the Roland Martin Show on the Empowerment Radio Network, having a conversation with the community and having a conversation and debate on occasion with the phone. And here we are. And I was wondering if you had any more people waiting to talk. And we also have somebody who was talking to us earlier who's still on the phone. We want to finish hearing their thoughts. I think that's John.
Yes,
John?
I'm here.
Okay. Could you finish your comment?
I'm not sure what's taking place here. I'm starting to feel as though that there's preferential treatment and a double standard taking place. Anytime somebody interjects a thought that appears to be against promoting homosexuality, it appears that we're getting cut off. It's been my
John, let me say something. You were cut off just now only because we have to go to break. At a certain time, we have to go to break. That's out of my control. It has nothing to do with me and my decisions. The breaks are predestined, and they occur at a certain time. And just now, you were cut off because we went into one of those breaks. And we're going to have another break. And we're going to have it personal. It's not predestined. It's automatic. So you were not cut off.
Thanks for clearing that up. I appreciate you sharing that information with me. Do you want me to continue speaking, or you'd like for me to remain quiet?
No, I want you to finish your thought, but I want to make sure the stuff you're saying about conspiracies and control and blah, blah, blah is understood, that is not the case. I have nothing to do with when these breaks come. When they come, they come. So
okay.
you were, as I said before, that's the case. So let's see. I want to hear you because you got other people who have things to say. I'm sure the doctor has more to say.
Okay. As an educated, as a special... Hello?
Yeah, we're listening.
As a special education teacher, I have two children, a male and a female, and I am concerned about their future. I think that there's an agenda taking place today that's not allowing freedom of choice in terms of, being heterosexual and being proud of it. And I appreciate what Dr. Umar represents in terms of representing black masculinity and standing on a platform of strength and promoting education that's beneficial to black people. I subscribe to the concept of the ideology of being unapologetically black and promoting that. And anything that I can do to spread that message, I will, because I think it's important, especially when I'm working with young people in a special education setting, and I'm seeing how they're being affected by the drugs, the kiddie crack, and how the males are growing breasts, and females are not attracted to men anymore. So we have to definitely take a stand in order to promote and to reassure a future for our people, for our children.
Thank you, John. I appreciate your commentary.
Thank you for allowing me to say that.
Absolutely, brother. And some of the sentiments that you mentioned, particularly the pro-black piece and the black affirmation piece, I think I concur with. But I'm going to talk about that more at some other point. I want to hear now from another caller. I think her name is Cleacha. Cleacha?
No, Felicia.
I'm sorry, Felicia. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
I'm doing great.
What's your comment?
My comment is that I'm noticing that dealing with the homosexual movement now, when people are against homosexuality or speak up against homosexuality, or even if they say, well, you know what, they don't believe in or don't agree with it, is that they are immediately attacked as being gay bashing or, something negative or whatever. But we as individuals in this country have a right to agree or disagree. Dr. Johnson agrees with the lifestyle. He doesn't preach hate or any type of attacks against homosexuals. He just don't agree with the lifestyle.
Felicia?
So doesn't he have a constitutional right?
Felicia, I have not. Felicia, I'm not. Maybe you're referencing the previous caller Ishmael, his comments. Frankly, some of which I agree with, frankly, but I have not challenged Dr. Umar's perspective. I don't have no problem with his perspective. He gets to have his perspective. I have not called him homophobic one time. So if you're referencing this conversation, that has not occurred. What has occurred is I asked him yesterday to talk more about what his perspective was on the issue, and he shared it. He said he didn't support, and he said something very similar this morning. But I have not challenged him for having his perspective. Now, there's aspects of it that I totally disagree with, and I think they're universalizing a lot of issues, and he articulates. And one day we're going to talk about that. But frankly, one thing I want to do with Dr. Johnson at some point is have a community live conversation with him where maybe there'll be a moderator or not, but that we can have a real live nuance for real conversation about this, because the radio ain't the best form, particularly with call-ins that come in, because everything is random. We don't know what's going to emerge, and it could either support or derail a constructive conversation on such an issue. But it's easier to have it in full and at full volume with full discussion live. I'm going to invite the brother to have that kind of conversation. We're both on the East Coast. It won't be a big deal to do that, where we can actually hear each other and people can actually have a rational conversation. And again, rational conversation don't mean agree. It don't mean agree with me, but it means be rational and able to back up your perspective from a perspective that's relevant in culture and not a bunch of theories from my perspective. Now, again, regarding your comments about people being called homophobic or attacked because they don't agree with homosexuality, I think people have a right to agree or disagree with homosexuality, bisexuality, whatever they think. That's fine. But I believe in constructive conversation where people can back it up and we can all have some dialogue. As I said yesterday, every time I hear about this conversation from people that are called Pan-Africanists, it's always a monologue. It's never a dialogue where both people are on the stage talking about it and there's equal narrative around people's perspective and experience and what they know about this topic. And that needs to change. That's the courageous thing to do. Monologues aren't courageous from our perspective. Dialogues are courageous, because then you get to hear more than one side. But he has not been attacked. No one's been attacked for not agreeing with homosexuality.
Oh, wait a minute. Now, you know you cut me off, right?
Yeah. I interjected.
Still, I wasn't finished.
Now you can.
I mean, but you see where I'm coming from? But the thing is that you are right. We need to have a conversation. We need to have a dialogue, because the thing is that our people need to understand that there are people who are not going to agree with homosexuality.
Sure,
it's just,
absolutely.
It is what it is.
That's right.
Okay? But the purpose of what we need to do as a people, right now we have more serious situations going on. Black men are getting murdered, our children are being miseducated, and to mainly focus on that, because guess what? You mentioned yesterday about pedophilia, and how pedophilia is not just, it's not just dealing with the boys, but guess what? The boys are not reported as much.
That's right.
Pedophilia against the boys is not important. We always hear about the girls.
Yeah.
See, people think that homosexuality is just think of it as, okay, a boy has sex with a man one time. No. There's different situations that causes a boy to go to be homosexual. You heard even Don Lemon on CNN. He stated that he was molested. That was his connection to homosexuality. He didn't say anything about being natural.
He didn't say. Now, I heard what Don Lemon said. I got to correct you. Don Lemon did not say that his homosexuality was connected to being molested. He said that he was molested.
No, he was molested.
He said that he was molested.
Basically, it was dealing with homosexuality. I have friends who are homosexuals who have been molested.
All right.
Now, these are people I know. I personally know.
Sure.
Well, what I'm saying
so do I. I know people have been molested as well.
We just can't dwell on it being natural. It's so controversial and so diverse that the conversation about it takes more. Like you say, it's more of just a radio. It would take a town hall meeting or something like that. I
think that's a great idea, but I do have to interject and potentially go to another caller. But one thing I think is interesting about what goes on here is that people say they don't want to talk about homosexuality, and I can live without talking about it too. I mean, even in this conversation with Dr. Umar, I did not plan for this to be the focus, but people always say, and you just did it, Felicia, we keep talking about it, but everything you're talking about is relevant to it, and you're reiterating it, and you are also you're developing the topic or some version of it in your own conversation while prefacing that with, we talk about it too much. But anyway, I'm sorry, I got Felicia. Number one, I got to go to a break, and number two, I got to let you go. So thank you for calling, and I appreciate your perspective, and we have other people who are going to be joining us in a moment. We'll be preparing to go to a break, and when we get back from the break, of course, we'll continue the dialogue and hear whatever people have to say. But if you don't want to talk about homosexuality, you got to not talk about it. You can't not talk about it and talk about it at the same time. This is Cleo Monago, guest host on the Roland Martin Show. We'll be back. We're back again, people. Back again here on the Roland Martin Show with guest host Cleo Monago and guest Dr. Umar Johnson. And we're talking to you. You're lined up to talk to us, and we want to hear from you. And if you haven't yet and want to get in line, the number is 888-669-2281. We hope to get varying perspectives and answer any questions. So far, we've gotten a lot of perspectives, but not many questions. But we'll see what happens as we go forward. We have somebody named Jimo. I hope I'm saying it right. Jimo, are you with us? Good morning. Yeah, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Did I get your name right? What's your name?
My name is J-Mo.
Oh, J-Mo. I'm sorry. Good morning, J-Mo. Your comments, please.
Yeah. My comment is, as a brother who was molested as a child and ain't no homosexual, violently against it, because I see that serves the family. I noticed that as I got older, the cats who molested me and my brother, when we were around the same age, probably around second grade, they were being molested by their father. It turned out that their father had been molested when he went to prison. He was molested by the inmate,
right,
and he was molested by the guard.
Damn.
Now, that shows a culture for black people who like to claim homosexuality. All it does is give you a position within a nation that despises your family unit. And it just so happens that you select to choose a lifestyle that furthers that goal that they have. Now, an aspect of the sister saying, it's always a monologue and not a dialogue, you have to understand something. When people find things perverse based off a tradition, it's not going to get a window. It's not going to get an easy window. And for you to say that people shouldn't be against it,
I never said
or
that.
that people should even entertain it, as far as even taking on your perspective, the way that y'all try to absolve yourselves from attachment to the European perspective of it is very weak. It's very weak because it all comes from molestation.
You know, one of the hold on, brother. I want you to stay on the phone, but I want to hold on. J-Mo, hold on a second, because I mean, this is going to be a little bit of a conversation. I know you have things to say, but you just said some very provocative things. And what concerns me about what you said is that's a perspective that is a part of a monologue that I've heard before. And it almost sounds like people are afraid to hear another perspective, because it's fine to think whatever you think, but if you really have the courage to believe in it, then you don't mind having a discussion about it with somebody who might disagree. And what kills me about some of these conversations is that the people that keep saying this stuff are typically heterosexual identified and are not a same-gender loving or homosexual person, and coming from, for lack of a better term, an outsider perspective. And so what is the benefit in some constructive way of constantly hearing a one-sided conversation about a community or a people or a type of people that actually exists and that are in the black community? I mean, what's the constructive aspect of that approach?
Your perspective is not your own.
My perspective is not my own. Is that what you just said? You said that my perspective is not my own?
Your perspective is not your own. You're adopted.
Oh, okay. Well, see, that's why there has to be conversation, because you're telling me, J-Mo, I'm a thinking, clear, cogent, sober person, never been high, drunk, or out of control of my faculties in my entire life, and I'm very clear on who I am and where and how I came to be. And you're telling me, one grown man to another, you insist on telling me how I came to be, that I'm not making my own decisions, that I'm some kind of pawn. Man, that's insane. There needs to be a conversation about this, because that's crazy.
Completely pervasive within their culture.
Who's there? Who is their culture?
Now look, this whole gay movement thing, right?
I'm not involved in the gay movement.
Is an exposure right there. Right.
Okay, brother. All right.
Well, I'm not saying you call yourself gay,
brother. I'm not involved. You don't know me, and if you want to know me, you got to ask questions to me. You don't know me, and nothing you saying so far makes any connection to me. But there's another issue here, though, too, that I'm concerned about. Because see, what's going to happen, and it happened to some extent yesterday, is some people are going to, particularly people that are supportive of Omar, are going to ironically whine about homosexuality being focused on. But everybody who calls here, particularly who prefaces their comments with supporting him, brings up this issue. Everybody who calls brings up this issue and keeps the issue going and says stuff that's not true or have the nerves like you just got finished doing to tell me who I am, what I'm doing, who I'm associated with, and I'm not talking for myself. Man, when you tell a grown man who knows who he is, that don't make no sense.
You're kind of emotional, but
no, it's not. I'm not emotional at all, man. I'm calm. I'm just. I don't know how else to say it.
We have not always went along with this perspective of so-called relationship. The fact that they call it gay, that shows a molestation of a word that was already in existence before they do it. The reason why they attached onto the aspect of happy was because they wanted to do away with the automatic perversiveness that other people, non-white people, and people who don't go along with that, have when encountering it, man.
All right, brother. Well, when our community finally has the courage to confront this issue head on and not just simply do these linear monologue attacks that are, frankly, often ignorant, until we have a real conversation about this, we just going around in circles. And when you tell me who I am and how I am, that's just not going to work. But now we got to go to somebody else unless you have some kind of quick final thing to say before we move on to another caller.
This is my final thing I'm going to say. If y'all want to say y'all was born that way, why take it inside of schools and tell children that they have?
You got to ask somebody who's taken it inside of schools. I haven't taken anything. I haven't taken anything inside of a school, it's not relevant to me, brother.
In this nation.
But thank you for your call.
You have people saying they're born that way.
Thank you for your call, brother. Thank you for your call. We appreciate it. Okay, James, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. Can y'all hear me?
Yes. You have a question or a comment?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Okay. I basically have a comment. I have a weird perspective about this. I was molested as a young child by a grown man, and somehow I blocked it out my mind. And it came back when I was like 25 years old. I got 3 children. I'm married. I'm a successful man. I have a business. But when it came back to my mind, it has me so now I'm questioning myself. Now, before I remembered what was going on, I never questioned. So my perspective, I feel like it's a disease that is pedophilia, and it is passed on to children. And then the child grows up confused, and I just think it's wrong. So
all right, brother.
I agree with Dr. Umar. I've been supporting Dr. Umar. I'm going to continue supporting him. But I just feel like it needs to stop.
All right.
So the wreck homes and lies.
All right. Well, thank you for your perspective, man. Like I said before, hopefully at some point on a community level, we'll have a conversation about this and have experts in the house who can talk about molestation, have experts who talk about this whole thing from a nuanced perspective, because our community is the only community that has not had that kind of conversation. So-called molestation and the actual fact of molestation, which we know is a problem, and a problem that we haven't talked enough about as a community. It happens in other communities. There's whites, there's Asians, there's Latinos. All these communities do a molestation. And despite the fact that they all confront molestation because it's a problem, they still better confront this issue. And I want to say confront does not mean agree. Confront means having a rational, nuanced discussion on it so we can get beyond just these linear perspectives. Because the perspectives that I've heard so far, I've heard them before. And there's definitely more to this issue than molestation and what's being said so far. But, hey, people call, and if people are molested all the time, and it's a horrible thing that people are molested. And in this instance, there's people who have been molested who are heterosexual anyway, and there's people who are molested who are homosexual anyway. It's going both ways, even including among those who call, because molestation does not necessarily determine people's sexuality, though it's a trauma. and there's a whole bunch that can be discussed on this issue, and hopefully we'll get that. But this conversation on the phone may or may not do that. But I'm going to move on to the next caller, man. Okay? For calling, Omar. Before I go to Melody in San Diego, did you want to chime in?
Yes, I think that so far I'm liking what I'm hearing because it shows the diversity of opinion about this issue in the black community. And I think that all the callers were dead on. Even if you don't agree with everything they had to say, they were very dead on about the fact that there's only one narrative that's being discussed about homosexuality, and that is the nature over nurture narrative. But there's a lot of other triggers for homosexuality. Myself, having been a therapist for 20 years, I can tell you the major triggers from what I've seen and heard directly from my black male homosexual patients. Number one, at the top of the list is molestation. At the top of the list is molestation. Number two, being introduced to it by stronger peers. A lot of our children are
sorry, doctor. Some people think I'm controlling, but I'm not. That music comes up automatically, and when it comes up, I got to go to a break because we have to sell some stuff to keep things going. So again, this is Cleo Monago on the Roland Martin Show, here hosting on the Empowerment Radio Network. Give us a call if you want to join the discussion. And we're back. Us particular break, Dr. Omar was giving us a list of things that he has learned regarding homosexuality and from his perspective, how it occurs and why it occurs. And he was going down a list, and so we're still listening.
Indeed. And again, this is informed by 20 years of therapy. This isn't no Eurocentric research. This is face-to-face work with homosexual black people, adults as well as children. And number one at the top of the list is molestation, without a doubt. Many boys who are introduced to homosexuality by virtue of being molested by a same-gender man. And when a boy's first sexual experience is with a man, it can cause significant psychological confusion. The first time you experience sexual pleasure is with a man, it can cause significant psychological confusion. It can also trigger hate. It can trigger hate for your gender. I don't want to be a man because this is what men do to other men. And it can make you in more to the female gender than to the masculine gender. Same thing I see with females. When women are raped by men, they can grow to hate males, especially women who are repeatedly raped. And black women have a higher incidence of being multiply molested and raped. When that happens over and over again, or even just once, is enough to trigger a trauma and a hatred and a supreme and significant distrust for black men to the point that you never want to be with a black man. In fact, one of the differences I find between lesbian sisters and homosexual brothers, one of the biggest differences is that the lesbian black woman is more likely to admit this was not by nature. She's more likely to admit, I chose this because I got tired of being abused by men. I chose this because I saw what my father did to my mother. I chose this because me and my sisters was raped by my uncle, and I do not like men. I would rather spend my life with a woman. So one of the big differences I see is that black men are more likely to ascribe it to nature, but black women are more likely to be honest with this life. And then the next pathway to homosexuality is simply being introduced by the peer group. We have to realize we have homosexual gangs. This doesn't get talked about a lot. Here in Philadelphia, we have gay girl gangs and gay male gangs that run the high schools. And if you are a low self-esteem child, socially awkward, socially isolated, you want to fit in, you might not necessarily be into homosexuality. But guess what? If I join this group, everybody's into this. And the only way I can be a part of that group is to get into this. But getting into this is going to bring me respect. It's going to bring me identity. It's going to bring me protection. A lot of kids simply get introduced to it, and because they're not strong enough to resist it, just like marijuana, just like alcohol, they get introduced to it, and because they're not strong enough to resist it, they end up falling victim to the lifestyle. And the last thing I would say is psychological castration. Psychological castration cannot be underscored enough. What is psychological castration? Particularly with males. You don't see it as much with women, but you see it there too. This is when a boy is ridiculed by his father, by other adults, by other children. This is why bullying is so much of a problem in our community, to the point where you're often told you're not a man. You're not athletic. You're not attractive. No woman will want you. You don't do nothing right. You're a coward. You can't fight. And what they do is they castrate his self-image of being a man so much that he buys into the false notion that he cannot function successfully as a male. And because of that, he then adopts the alternative gender perspective and identity of being female. We see it with women. When girls are constantly told that they're too much of a tomboy, you're not attractive, don't no boy want you, you castrate that female to the point she doesn't feel like she has what it takes to be a woman, and she then begins to start hanging out with the boys. She then begins to start adopting the same type of pleasures and likes and hobbies as the boys. And the boys do the same thing with the girls. I'm not good enough to hang out with the guys, so I'm going to hang out with the girls. And I start adopting their desires. And slowly but surely, I get introduced to it by psychological castration. I had a client, a male
Dr. Johnson,
client, that this was very true.
The only reason I have to interject because, again, time is limited. You just said a lot.
I got you. 5 seconds, Cleo.
You went down your list, and I need you to finish that list.
I got you. Give me 5 seconds. I had a male client of mine whose mother psychologically castrated him. She beat him down mentally so much that he ended up becoming homosexual, and he admitted it. He was able to tell me himself that it was traced to the fact that my mother made me feel I was inadequate as a male.
Okay, thank you. One of the things I want to say, and as listeners can witness, the brother said his piece. He said what he had to say. I'm going to say my piece, and hopefully I can say it before the break. One of the things I think people need to understand is that psychologists, their job is to deal with people with mental health challenges. So most of the people who are psychologists are going to see are people who are traumatized, who need psychological intervention, who are struggling with who they are, who are struggling mentally, who are dealing with some struggles where they need intervention. There's a whole lot of same-gender loving people like myself who never need to go to the likes of Dr. Umar. So he doesn't know my story because I didn't need to tell him my story because I didn't need the therapy that he provides. So when Dr. Welsing, for example, her book in the ISIS papers, she talks about some case studies that are connected to bisexuality. And I believe what she says is true. I believe that there's things that are within what Dr. Umar says that have some truth. I don't think it's all true. I think some of it is a opinion and a perspective and some conjecture and a position as opposed to absolute truth. But people are supposed to talk to you when you're a psychologist about their challenges. Often people who are raped, which is a profound trauma, one of the most terrible traumas a human being can experience is trauma, are going to go through some time. But some people are not confused at all. There are heterosexual boys or men who have been molested by men who are real clear that this is horrific. I'm not interested in this. This is a trauma. This is a violation. I'm not with this. There's women who are raped by men who love men, but know the difference between love and violation. And there's also the kind of women that you mentioned who are scared of men because men have hurt them. But there's women who, on both sides of that story. There's women who are heterosexual, regardless of the rape. There's women who were raped that were same-gender loving and continued with who they were as a result of them being what they were in the first place, rape or no rape. So there is dimension here. There are people who, like some of the people that have called on this phone, who say they're heterosexual, who had a stronger male who molested them, but it didn't change their sexuality because they were not homosexuals in the first place. Rape occurs. Rape is horrible. Rape has a traumatizing effect on whoever is. The implication here, which I know is not some kind of absolute truth, is that all of this is why people are homosexual. That when we finally, as a community, have the courage and the humanity to have a full-on conversation that's fair, again, not a conversation that is like somebody said earlier in this call, trying to make us accept it. Blah, blah. Look. As I said yesterday, I don't need nobody's acceptance. So that's not even on my list of interests of please accept me. I'm not interested. But what I am interested in, as I said many, many times, is a functional dialogue. Because then I can talk, for example, about the context of perspectives like Dr. Johnson's. He said more than once that he has 20 years of experience. I haven't even gotten to my experience as a behavioral health expert regarding the years that I've done work around this. And having worked with heterosexual, homosexual, I mean the whole spectrum, because I'm not just focused at all by a long shot on just homosexuality. I will not have a homosexual obsessed. Very radio interview, the callers are continuing the homosexual song, and we keep singing it because that's what they keep introducing because it's a concern in our community. And I think there is so much concern because there has not been any dialogue. Most people that I've heard talk about it, the likes of Dr. Umar and other people who are referred to as Pan-Africanists, as always is pathological. Oh, you're molested. They bring up pedophilia as if it's a homosexual problem, and when it's not, it's a human problem, and it occurs across.
Well, why do you have a problem with that, Cleo? It seems like you have a problem.
I can speak for myself. My problem, as I think I've already said, is that the conversation is always steeped in pathology and monologue, with the pathology being the central focus.
But viewed from an African cultural perspective, Cleo, that's accurate. Homosexuality does not have its origin in traditional African culture. You cannot find me a culture prior to the arrival of the Arab or the European where homosexuality was practiced as a normal way of life. You cannot find that.
Well, you can't find nothing. You can't find nothing today that happened in ancient Africa because it's ancient Africa. You can't find it.
There was not a word for it.
There's
no
word.
There was no word for homosexuality in ancient African culture. There wasn't even a word for it.
Well,
it wasn't even something that the human mind even dealt with.
Doctor, that's what you're saying right now is not true. Number one. Number two. Let me finish this. Let me finish this point. First of all,
Go ahead.
At the risk of offending you, I'm not sure you've been to Africa. But I've been to Africa. I've been all over Africa. When people say something like, let me say this point. I want to say this point before the break comes. Saying the term Afrocentric and African is a ridiculous notion, and let me tell you why. Because the continent, the continent is. Well, let me finish, brother. Because I could wow a lot of things you said, but I don't want to interrupt you because I have the courage to listen to you.
Go ahead.
Africa, the continent of Africa is huge. There's multiple cultures.
And?
There's no one way of being African. There's people in the east. There's people in the south. There's people in the north. There's all kinds of things going on. And when people
you're
interrupting me. You're interrupting me, brother. Let me finish. I didn't interrupt you. I did not interrupt you. I did not interrupt you, brother. And I'm not gonna listen to you interrupt me. I'm gonna finish saying what I'm saying. As I was saying, the continent is huge. There's not one way of being African. The people who are in Eritrea and Ethiopia and Kemet and I'm not missing the point. I don't have your opinion.
I disagree.
I don't share your opinion.
I disagree with you.
Well, of course you do.
But Cleo, listen to me. On the surface, okay, or let's say South African culture, Ethiopian culture.
Brother, we have to go to a break. Hold your horses.
Cleo, let me make this point.
No, we go into a break. You won't be heard.
Okay.
This is Cleo Monago on the Roland Martin Show. And we are heading into a break. If you want to join us, call us at 888-669-2281. Welcome back. This is Cleo Monago here on the Roland Martin Show on the Empowerment Radio Network. We have calls, line, and this show tends to do that, regardless of the guests, and it's not an exception today. We have people calling in. And what I want to tell you, doctor, is that we're going to be taking some more of these calls because people are complaining about not being able to get in. And we're going to be
okay. Can I make my quick comment?
But it's going to be literally quick. But hold on a second before you make it.
Yes, sir.
I got to give you some context here.
It was in relation to.
So you can know what we're getting ready to do. Hold on, brother. Hold on. You're not listening. I'm giving you some directions here that we got to follow. We're going to be winding down this particular part of the show soon. We have people calling. We want to hear from them. And so whatever you say that you're quickest so we can get them in so people won't miss out with the opportunity to talk to you and myself while we're both here on this show. So
yes,
like you to finish up that comment.
In relation to the comment you just made about Pan-Africanism and this whole African-centered movement. I don't know if you realize it, but you just spit on the grave of every grandmaster teacher we've ever had, every scholar that's ever walked this earth. But I wanted to say this. There's a book that you might want to read by Sheikh Anna Diop, the greatest anthropologist of all time. It's called The Cultural Continuity of Africa. And what he talks about is that although African culture on the surface may be somewhat different, there is a underlying cultural and spiritual continuity to all cultures in Africa. So it doesn't matter where you go, although the names may be different, some of the nuances may be different, the cultural foundation across the mother continent is identical from place to place. Once you look at the cultural values and the principles, they are all the same. So we got to be very careful not to overemphasize this European notion that Africans don't have much in common with other African countries. The continuity is identical, and that's why we say Pan-Africanism, and that's why we say that we embrace the study of ourselves from an African-centered holistic perspective, brother. We are more alike than we are different.
Thank you, brother. Okay, so we have Salih who wants to hear you, Salih.
Yes.
Welcome. You have a comment or question?
Yeah, Pete. Peace, Dr. Umar. It's your favorite firefighter from Boston.
Peace, brother.
Calling in.
Boston in the house.
Everything. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm gonna move on from homosexuality, family, just to add a little balance to this entire, for lack of a better term, interview. Just because it's not hard for some of us, for the strong black men that are interested in the health and welfare and improving the health and welfare of our people, to remove those who are unfit to lead this battle from the forefront. So I want to deal with you, Dr. Umar, please, and just if you could, just to kind of round out a lot of this conversation and speaking directly to the academy that you're working so tirelessly, could you please run through the disciplines that you plan on teaching at the academy and its relevance to? I'm sorry?
Continue, brother.
No, we don't still hear you, bro.
I'm sorry. And their relevance, given a brief synopsis of each of the disciplines that you plan on teaching, because I know there's a lot of people who are listening who may not have heard you speak personally, where you do that very beautifully, very eloquently, and very succinctly. Just a brief synopsis, if you would, on how you plan on developing more black men to be like you and I, so we can kind of, not kind of, but definitively move away from the condition that our people are currently in. Thank you so much.
Great question.
Thank you for that, Brother Sides. Let me respond to that as quickly as I can. Brother Cleo, the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy is going to be based on 6 key sciences: agricultural and agronomical science. In order for black people to improve our situation, we have to improve the way we eat. We have to also have control over the sources from where our food comes. So we're going to teach our young people how to grow their own food. For the meat eaters, they will be taught how to raise their own cattle. There will also be agronomical science that teaches African children how to actually turn the growing of food into an industry. Agribusiness is the number one business on the face of the earth, and black people have almost no part in agribusiness, the growing and distribution of food worldwide. And so through our agricultural curriculum, we want to tackle that challenge. Economic and financial curriculum. We want to teach our children the science of Wall Street, stocks, bonds, investment banking, multinational corporations, and how they function. We offer them the science and art of banking, how to build banks, how to build credit unions, how to build savings and loan institutions. They're going to be taught the real estate market as well. They're going to be taught about all the different aspects of economic wealth and growth that black people have traditionally been turned off and away from. Our premise is that our children can become wealthy without college. Our children can become wealthy without working for white folks. The next science is dietary and nutritional science, where we teach African children how to take care of their bodies, how to stay healthy. Above and beyond the agricultural science, they have to be taught the properties of the minerals that can be used to cure the common cold, that can be used to cure diabetes. We want our young people to have the medical science of a Dr. Thady, the science of a Laila Africa, the science of a Scott Whitaker, a Queen of Four. We want them to master the body and God's herbs so we can treat our ailments without resorting to European pharmaceuticals. And then there's the science of the black community, where our boys will be taught how to be men, how to be fathers, how to be husbands, how to be sons, how to be leaders in the community, how to properly respect your woman and take care of your woman. And our daughters will be taught the science of black men and the science of the black woman, why you are the first symbol ever used for God on earth, why the black woman is the cream of the crop and the mother of civilization.
All right,
we
brother, you got to wind it down.
Our children how to build family and community. And the other science is African spiritual and cosmological science, where they will be taught the cultural unity of Africa.
Thank you, brother.
Dogon, Kemet,
Thank you,
all
doctor.
of these cultures, Cleo, have a similar underlying purpose and value system. And the last thing is my email for anyone who wants to send a resume to work at the school. Send your resume to FDMG. F for Frederick, D for Douglas, M for G for Garvey. FDMG resumes, RESUMES @gmail.com. And don't forget to make a donation. fundme.com/Dr. Umar.
All right, brother. Thank you for that. Those of you who heard the show yesterday, I asked him the same question. So he did give us that information yesterday as well, and I appreciate that caller.
But it did need to be reiterated, Cleo.
Oh yeah, I'm not. Don't, like I said, don't make any assumptions. I'm just mentioning that it was. I asked him the same question yesterday, trying to stay on point about your school, and I appreciate that he brought it back today because everybody else want to talk about homosexuality. So I'm glad that this caller changed up the topic and gave us some more time to talk about what the primary focus was supposed to be anyway, which is your school and your attendance with the school. So thank you, caller, for changing things up. But we have another caller named Melanie who wants to join us, and we'll see what she has to bring. Melanie, you there? Hello?
Yes, good morning. How are you both?
I'm well.
I just wanted to call in. I hate to be the customer to bring it all the way back around, but both of you brothers make so many great points. And sometimes it does seem like you guys are arguing the same point when y'all, again, like Cleo said, we just have so many different perspectives in the black community. And one thing I do hope, Dr. Umar, obviously from this conversation, is that you will have counseling at this academy and obviously a great debate team so we can learn how to communicate with one another. But as far as the molestation or homosexuality, I know personally, I know a lot of older people that were molested by older family members, but nowadays, and I know from personal experience, we've got to watch other kids now that are touching the other kids. So it is something very, very, our community, and I can't speak for an African or a Haitian or any other African descended colored, melanated person, but as a black sister in America. And when it comes to the black boys in this country, that is something that is very, very serious. And because of Dr. Umar's perspective, I believe, having to, like you said, Cleo, having to talk to so many of these same boys and hear these same issues, we cannot sit here and not say that we can't make this a priority because there are many other things going on, as you mentioned, Cleo, many other things going on in this community. But this is definitely one thing. If we're going to talk about black boys and their upbringing and their foundation, we got to nip it in the bud.
Thank you, sister. I appreciate that. We have Nestor Trotwell. Nestor, are you there?
Hi, this is actually Nefertiti,
Hi, Nefertiti.
And I am a woman. I want to say greetings to you, Cleo Monago, and greetings to Dr. Umar Ifatunde Abdullah Johnson on the line.
You know the whole thing. Okay.
I just want to make sure everybody know it and knows how to pronounce it correctly.
I didn't know that.
I want to take the conversation of homosexuality to a completely different perspective. I want to talk about the scientific and public health perspective and what our black men, specifically in the Caribbean, are dealing with right now. The black men, specifically in Jamaica, based on the last recent statistics, who have sex with men are testing 18 times higher than the general population for HIV and AIDS and sexually transmitted diseases.
Sister,
from that perspective, dealing with the science.
I'm sorry, sister. That music means that I have no choice but to take a break.
That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. That's fine.
And so we'll be back, but we'll be preparing to end this part of this show as well.
Okay.
But we'll be back in a moment on the Roland Martin Show on the Empowerment Radio Network with Cleo Monago. We're back, people, in our closing moments with Dr. Umar. So people who are on the phone and waiting to talk to us, you can hang on there and join in Monique Presley in a moment, who'll be talking about issues relevant to black women and relationships and marriage. So that's the next topic and our next guest. But we're preparing to end with the beloved Dr. Umar Johnson. And I want to say to this brother that I hope we have some conversations that I call courageous conversations, where we're both in dialogue in a community setting and really going to task in terms of looking at this issue from a nuanced perspective and trying to talk about what we can do about whatever that's going to be from people's perspective with an existing population among our black folks that's here and always been here and that's going to be here. And we need to talk about how to have family across our differences, or whatever people's perspective are very clearly on the issue. So Melanie was going to finish up, and then Dr. Umar is going to finish up, and I'm going to request that the doctor not go long because we already have a guest waiting, and I do not want to have to cut the brother off. I hate doing that to people. So just want to make that before you even get started. But now we're going to let Melanie finish, then we're going to go to the doctor, and we're going to be out. Melanie?
Hello?
Hi, Nefertiti.
This is Nefertiti.
Hi, Nefertiti.
Okay. Hi, I want to just quickly repeat what I was getting into. I want to ask a question or discuss the public health and the physiological and scientific perspective of this whole HIV and AIDS epidemic as it pertains to black men who have sex with black men in countries such as Jamaica and Belize, with the average prevalence of HIV being 32% in that population versus 1.7, which is the average in the general population. Mm-hmm. And I want to discuss, the facts. Mm-hmm. How do you explain that despite great progress in tackling the HIV epidemic in the last 20 years, that is the one population that the epidemic continues to grow in all incomes. And that population, let me be clear, is men who have sex with men.
Sure.
That is based on July 20th, 2012 edition of The Lancet. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That explores the unique aspects of the HIV epidemic and men who have sex with men, showing that factors such as biology, the biology of anal sex, the characteristics of the men who have sex with men networks, and known behavioral factors that are driving the epidemic in this population. Okay. Let's discuss how we fix that.
Okay. Well, do me a favor. Hold on, doctor. I want to respond to Nefertiti first. I think you raise an important topic. I happen to know a whole lot about this topic, and as a matter of fact, the statistics that you quoted regarding the Caribbean are quite similar here in the United States among men who have sex with men, black men who have sex with men. So there's a very similar disproportionate epidemic all over the diaspora, and I could talk about that quite well and in great detail with facts, etc. But we don't have time to go into that topic on this conversation now. Seriously, because we get ready to end. And I mean, you did something that happened yesterday. You brought up this powerful, huge topic at the end of the show, and it's something that I want to talk about. So, could you promise me that when we have that conversation, which could be relatively soon, you will call, and we can talk about it, because I know the answers to that question. Absolutely, I know.
Oh, I know the answers. I'm a practitioner to the question. I just wanted your perspective.
Sure.
The answer is traditional African lifestyles.
Well, you mean that? You mean the solution? You mean the solution is that when you say the answer is
good point. Good point, my point.
All right, Nefertiti, thank you.
That means,
please call back seriously when we have that conversation. And you can repeat whatever that means when you say African tradition, because right now that's an ambiguous record. But we can't do it right now, sister. You're going into Dr. Umar's time. You're going into Dr. Umar's time, sister.
No, don't put her against me, Cleo. She's not going into my time.
Yes, she is. Okay, well then, because she might be your final word.
Well, let me take my minute. Can I get my minute, Cleo? And I'm looking at my clock.
Oh, I'm looking at the clock too, brother. Trust me.
Okay, what I wanted to say to the Queen, she's absolutely right. One of the issues that the LGBT movement is not dealing with is the bisexuality of black men who sleep with men and then go sleep with women, which is intensifying the heterosexual age rate amongst black women. That is not by any segment of the LGBT.
She talked about men. She didn't talk about women.
It's not being addressed. There's no campaign, but you're cutting me off, Cleo.
I'm going to cut you off again if you don't get back on topic. We can't talk about that right now.
And the next time we talk, Cleo, I also want to know why you consider yourself gay, but you're not comfortable calling yourself homosexual. Brothers and sisters,
I don't consider myself gay. No, it's not going to work like that, brother. I do not consider myself gay. Octenwood Johnson is wrong.
9858 unapologetically African. We will win.
Take care, brother. You out?
You will.
Thank you. Take care, doctor. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for being willing to in dialogue to the extent that we were able to, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to have final comments on this whole topic in a moment. And I'm going to see how much time I have. Let me ask our producers how much time we have so I can know whether I'm going to get to talk it out or not. But interesting conversation between myself, the callers, and Dr. Umar Johnson. There's a lot that can be said of the thing that came up. But I will just say this. One of the things that stuck out with me regarding all of his comments was what he said about Africa and how there being a central cultural theme around the whole continent. And, that may or may not be true, but I've been to Africa. I've been all through Africa. I've even been to the parts of Africa that are relatively uncolonized compared to the rest, like Eastern Africa, particularly Eritrea and Ethiopia. And regardless of the fact that there may be some threads, there are extremely different cultural differences, perspectives, architecture, ways of life, ways of looking at masculinity and femininity and gender and all that stuff. When it comes to the Dugon and the Zulu and different communities, they're night and day. So there's not one culture and not one way of being African, as always implied by people who call themselves Afrocentric. There's not one way, it's multiple ways of being African. It goes beyond Eurocentric perspectives of masculinity. Unfortunately, often in some of these Pan-African discussions, how people wind up talking about masculinity and this hyper-male, very masculine intentionality, interestingly enough, that's not African either. The whole aesthetic and machismo and ultra-masculine perspective that they want everybody to join into is a reaction to racism, white supremacy, the oppression of black people, the castration of black men, and humiliation that we've experienced for being victimized in this country for so long. Some of us trying to make up for that horrible experience with hyper, over-masculine interest and aesthetics. And there's more I can say about that, but I don't want to go into it until there's another person involved in conversation that can join me and bring just beyond my own perspective to this whole thing. But there's a lot to talk about. Interesting what Nefertiti did. Nefertiti brought in an issue, and she asked me if I'm already prepared. So, hey, what can you do? But my guest is here. My guest is Monique Presley. I look forward to the conversation. She's an analyst. She's also an attorney. And she's going to talk with me about black women and relationships. Supposedly, 67% of black women are single or are liable to be single. And supposedly, black women have the most challenges with having relationships or winding up in a union with another man. Those women who are heterosexual, which are most women. So we want to look at this because I've been concerned about this ever since I've heard it. As far as I'm concerned, women deserve to be loved. Black women deserve to be loved, deserve to have relationships that are loving, and deserve to be in partnership for the rest of their life, like other people apparently get to do. But you cannot resolve anything if the problems are in the abstract, and that there's a problem that's never discussed. Conversation in our community about the statistic that 60 to 70% there's an estimated 60 to 70% of black women who are single, and we want to know if it's by design or destiny or what is going on. So in a moment, in a very few seconds, as a matter of fact, we're going to have Monique join us. Are you there, Monique?
I'm here.
Hello, Monique. How are you?
I'm great, Cleo. How are you? Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome, sister. I'm doing really, really well. And thank you for joining me. We're
going to have to lighten it up a little bit, right?
Well, hopefully. I mean, hopefully there's lots of light at the end of the tunnel, and that we will show some...
Yes, let's head there now.
Okay. I'm on that jet with you, sister. I'm on that jet with you.
Okay.
But the topic here, though, is one that, I think that does concern black women, and they need some light. So maybe we get a discussion regarding how we can correct an allegation that an estimated between 60 to 7% of black women are single, and what are the cofactors leading to that allegation? What do you think?
Well, I mean, let's just language it out. I don't know that that's an allegation. I think that we've got some statistics that came out within the past few years, and the numbers of African American women who are single is high, and the number has been trending and spiking upward really, Cleo, since the 70s and the 80s, and the probably most alarming is the number who are single and have never been married. Many decades ago, the statistics were very, very different in that area, and I know that there are some reasons, and you probably have your own ideas about what those reasons are as well.
Of course. Of course. But I'm glad you helped to establish a narrative that I wanted you to be the one who said, no, these are not estimations. These are statistical facts, that there's been a growing problem. But we're heading into a break, and we'll be right back to have a full discussion on this, Monique. So that's what the music is about. Greetings, community. We are back. Thank you for hanging in there. Thank you for listening. Our phone lines are still very lit up, and we're excited about that. We can't wait to hear from you. But right now, we're in dialogue with our sister here, Monique Presley, who's got statistics concerning black women and singlehood, and what is the deal with 60 to 70% of black women being single. Tell us what's going on statistically.
Right. I just want to put some meat on the bones, Cleo, before we go further, because when you hear, at least, my sisters, when we hear numbers like 60 to 70% of us are not married, and when they're saying that this number is on the rise and that a large percentage of those have never been married, and some, where the allegation comes, will never be married, because we're looking at women who are now in their 40s, 50s, and 60s and are unmarried, that can be alarming. Yes. But that 60% has in it 6.2% of women who are widowed. It's got 10.9% of women who are divorced. It's got 4.1% of women who are separated. And the larger category of women who have never been married, and that's 46.8%. So when you add them all together, then you end up at over 6% not currently married, compared to the 32% of African American women who are married. And as I said before we went to the break, up until 1970 and approaching 1980, African American women married more frequently. There was a higher chance that they were going to get married than their white counterparts and than other racial groupings. And that started to change as we approached the 80s. And I want to throw it out there as one of the first markers in that change directly relates to the spiking, increasing numbers starting in late 70s, early 80s of African American males who were incarcerated. And you know, as I know, what those numbers have been like. And when you take a dramatic percentage of the African American male population and they're incarcerated, and they're incarcerated for longer years, for higher sentences than their white counterparts, it directly affects the ability of African American women, especially to get married, because the stats also show that we are the most likely to marry exclusively African American males. Right. So you've taken the direct pull, the pool of resources for husbands, for my sisters, because we marry within our same racial group.
So are you saying also, you said a lot, but I want to kind of do a little minor bullet pointing, if you will, in terms of time and space. So you're saying that also that before 1970, there was less incarceration, and incarceration spiked?
Well, in the late 70s and early 80s, yes. Okay. I mean, when you look at the war on drugs, when you look at the increased sentencing, when you look at the spikes in incarceration of African American males, yes. And there have been many who have studied and surmised that this war on the African American family unit and the knowledge that when you remove the males from the homes, that you look at intergenerational effects on not just communities, but on an entire race. And I think if you look at what we're dealing with now in every area, including things that we talked about just this morning on TV on News One Now, you see the effect effect of the increased incarceration, the increased arrest, the stiffer sentences of African American males. And I think one other area likely affected is the ability of African American women to marry, because the numbers show, whether it's right or wrong, I'm not getting into whether we should marry interracially or not. Those are all choices in front of us. Okay. No, I'm not.
You know you're not, okay.
I am not. You are free to, but I am not. What I am saying is that what we've done historically is marry African American males. We marry within our race at larger percentages than our African male counterparts do. That's as far as I'll go. And say that when there are less African American males available, when one reason is incarceration, then it affects the numbers. Pure and simple.
All right, Monet. Well, I am definitely going to address some of those things that you gave me the power to address, but that you won't address. But before getting into that, I want to attend to some of these callers. Is it Cheryl who's next from Maryland, or is it Malisha? Are you there? Hello.
I'm here. Hi, Cleo. How are you?
I'm doing well. What's your name again?
It's Maisha.
Hi, Maisha. How you doing? Welcome.
I'm wonderful. Thank you for taking me, and greetings to your guest. Now, I have a unique perspective, so I hope that I'll be heard out. And I just wanted to address some very, very important topics. And for me, one major factor, and this is just completely logical, so I hope you guys will go here with me. If we have a pool of black men and we have a pool of black women, basically the pool of black men that may decide to what I call molest each other, and we call it gay sex, and some people call it gay sex, but I call it molestation because only a man then it's going to lessen the available men for black women. And that's just simple logic, and we have to actually address that. And we have to address, like your previous caller said, our young men being molested when they're young, because I do know that a lot of men turn gay because of the introduction into being gay when they were molested as kids. And it's very sad, and my heart goes out. But we have to address it. This whole white sex assault, because it started with the cave beast of Europe, this whole thing. A man and woman have a beautiful relationship. You basically, if you cannot even look at a woman sexually, then I feel that there's an issue, there's a problem, spiritually. Because
thank you for that perspective. I appreciate it,
that's
Alicia.
The ultimate chauvinism.
Thank you for calling.
If you can't look at it.
No, you're still there, but I figured that you're getting ready to end because the other callers, but I think you made your point. One of your major points is that one of the problems is homosexuality, and homosexual who are not, male homosexuals in particular, who are not availing themselves to women and taking themselves out of the pool that are available to women, and that's one of the cofactors leading to women being single. So I think you make that point. I got it.
Can I address that for a second, Cleo?
Sure.
I mean, I didn't think that I would, but I will. And again, I'm just
I plan to address it too, by the way, but now we can start if you like.
I just want to, because when we say things, and I mean when people generalize and say a lot of people are doing this and so many people are doing that, what the numbers show from the most recent census data that we have is that about 3% of Americans self-identify as gay, homosexual, transgender, and that's men and women. And that number is what they consider overblown, not underblown, because they're considering every way that they could possibly include a criteria there. Mm-hmm. And my only point with regard to what that caller said is that that does not put a dent in these numbers. That's not, in my mind, a large marker or even one that should make the list for reasons why African American women are having larger and larger numbers in the never married category.
I'm glad you said that and mentioned that. And as I said in the previous call or the previous show, which I'm not going to get into, is I'm looking forward to having a full-fledged conversation about this, because the people who have been reactionary, and frankly, I think the last caller is part of that crew, who have this anti-homosexual agenda and focus and obsession, most of the people who have been bringing in from that crew, who keep talking about it in pathological ways and blowing it up. But there are some cofactors here, though, that I think do involve homosexuality, and I want to get beyond it and not have homosexual show part 2, but the sister brought it up, and I want to talk about incarceration. And I used to work in law enforcement in Los Angeles, and there are men there, as you already mentioned earlier, there's a problem of major disproportionate imprisonment and incarceration of black men in this country, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse, and it's getting worse. And in the context of being incarcerated in an all-male situation where the only kind of sexual opportunity in many cases is with another male, there are heterosexual men who are introduced to homosexual behavior and engagement who otherwise would not be homosexual, but they're trapped in these environments, and sometimes they're there for long terms, and they have relationships. You know, they discover the capacity to love another man or be sexual with another man, which they wouldn't do otherwise. And sometimes when they leave prison, they still have that memory or some interest in dabbling. And that is a situation where men get involved in homosexuality, and it's not their norm. And that's real. So the incarceration situation, not only does it lead to manlessness, it does lead to a situation that leads to what I'll call, artificially created homosexual context. And now, again, though, getting back to your point, I don't think that's at the top of the list of problems that women are facing who are dealing with being single, but it's in the spectrum. And I think people who are so-called Pan-Africanists blow that up and don't deal with the statistics and the facts that you're talking about. But what my point is raising the nuance here, because I'm really into looking at nuance.
Right.
Well, now there's that music again. That means we're getting
there it is.
into a break. We have some more callers, etc., and we'll be getting to them when we get back. Thank you for listening. Call in if you can. This is the Empowerment Radio Network with the Roland Martin Show. We're back. Welcome back, people. This is Cleo Monago. We're here with the illustrious Monique Presley talking about the state of black women when it comes to relationships. And in case you're just joining us, there's estimates that between 60 to 70% of black women are single. And we want to see what the cofactors are, whether it's by design or by destiny. And one of my focuses here is how we can resolve it. Because, again, I have not heard that much conversation about this. And I've heard people say things that are extreme and, in some cases, very ignorant and reactionary. But there has not been, like with other issues, a lot of sit-down problem-solving, rational discussion about some things that are really hurting us. And it breaks my heart, the whole idea of women who I love, black women, my mother, my sisters, women that I love and know, are at a high risk to be alone or single. That's insane. They deserve to be loved and taken care of and cared for someone and be nurtured and beloved for the rest of their life like everybody else. And there's been an interruption. And Monique brought in that before the 70s, black women were the most liable to get married. And then something occurred, and we discussed incarceration, and somebody brought in the issue of homosexuality. And then Monique made it clear that, no, that's not high on the list. And then I talked about something that I think people are concerned about, which is the marriage between, pardon the pun, the marriage between incarceration and introductions of homosexuality that would otherwise not occur. I think it's relevant.
Right. And Cleo, just again on the numbers alone, if you look at 600,000 African American men incarcerated, that's just a big, gigantic number. And then if you add to that number, I'm sure the callers will love this, 364,000 more married black men than married black women, and 14% of black men married non-African American women last year. Then what you see in terms of numbers, demographic, terms of the census taking, is that there are these huge factors, incarceration being one, interracial relationship trends being two, and then I'll just throw in a third, the consistent increase in education and career advancement of the African American woman and the effect that it has had both on her choice to marry and on the marriage pool of those who at one point would have been interested in her and are no longer.
Well, let me tell you what the word is on the street. I mean, I was going to introduce the issue of
What's the word, Cleo?
I was going to introduce homosexuality when I talked about it through this word, but not dwell on it. But this is the word on the street in terms of what's going on with black women, which is not necessarily connected to the statistics. I can never say that. Stats. I said it better that way. Stats. I can see the stats that you mentioned bring some facts in this whole thing, but the word on the street is this. Black men are dating white women and have fallen for the beauty standard in this country, which privileges the image of light and white women as being the epitome of beauty, which has been an issue in our community since slavery, and that has been bolstered by a media as well as black people who are prominent in the media kind of fulfilling that prophecy of a partner that looks half white or that's actually white, and educating, or if you will, influencing the populace of men to follow through with that by example. That's high on the list of what's on the street in terms of cofactors. Was also mentioned, of course, is incarceration, and men are not there. And another issue, which I was going to raise, but somebody already did, is people are thinking that all these homosexuals are coming out the woodwork, and there's homosexual seed, juice or something being put in the water, and making a bunch of black folks disproportionately homosexual more than anybody else as a conspiracy to interrupt the reproduction of black people. And there's people that believe from their heart and soul, and going around giving lectures on particularly the final issue that I've mentioned in terms of the homosexual, or what they call the LGBT influence on trying to make all black men homosexual so they won't reproduce, because this is a good way of keeping black people from being powerful enough in numbers to have control again on the global stage. So those are the things on the street. And one of the things that occurs a lot that we don't talk about is this interracial thing, because in a society we've been trained to think that interracial was good or not to be critiqued. And we're closed-mouthed about talking about some of the real cofactors here that are leading a growing number of black men to white men that could pass for white sometimes. Does this make any sense to you, or do I sound like I'm speaking, another language? Are you there? Oh, boy. Okay. Monique was lost. I'm sure she'll be back. So let's see what's going on at that place. Okay, well, can't have no empty time on the radio. We got to keep on talking to make sure that we're engaging the audience. But as I mentioned, while we wait for Monique to come back, that's what's on the street. That's right here all the time. I hear people talking about black men running to white women. As a matter of fact, there was a black woman, I forgot her name now, who was outraged and upset. She's literally a dark-skinned black women's activist. And she was very upset about Kendrick Lamar, finding out that Kendrick Lamar has a light-skinned girlfriend. I mean, she went in coon. She called her all kinds of names. And I thought it was inappropriate to do this name-calling and bashing publicly like that. But I got and understood her torture and her pain. I mean, black women want to believe that they can be with celebrities and high-profile black people and all kinds of black men. They want to know that they have access to that and that they won't be rejected just because they're black. That's some deep, heartbreaking stuff, if indeed you think that's what's going on. Are you back with us, Monique?
I am. And you know what, Cleo? Sometimes we major in the minors. And so you will find people who build whole opinion pages, whole careers out of focusing on a very small, minute part of what is a larger problem. And I do believe that the record is clear on the manner in which the African American woman has been viewed and dehumanized and denigrated and every bad thing that you can think of just for hundreds of years in the United States and around the world. And that also reflects the plight of women, not just women of color. And certainly there is an idea in the notions of many that European features and looks are supposed to be more appealing. We've seen trends against that of late, and I'm happy to see that. But these are issues, but these are not the fundamental issues. These aren't the issues that the research, the numbers, and actually the real people on the street can bear out, because then you would have to ignore the fact that we've got upwards of 10 to 15% of women who have been married and married a person and chose to end the marriage. And the numbers are high for the women being the ones to actually file for divorce and end these marriages. So numbers like that can't be ignored. That's not people in the never been married category. And like I said just a bit ago, there are also larger numbers of women who are getting educated, who are not wanting to follow the stay-at-home model that many men still mentally, physically are expecting. And then there's the effect of career, there's the effect of balancing of financing on the manner in which women think about marriage. For many decades, when you look at the trends, marriage was necessary for a woman as a way out and as a way up. We were dependent upon marriage as a vehicle to escape either parents' homes or to escape our circumstances ourselves, and that's just simply not the case.
Well,
so women are having to...
You helped me to think of another cofactor that's on the street as well.
Okay.
Is that black women are being targeted to do better and have circumstances that are less traumatizing compared to black men, let's say, who are disproportionately dealing with police brutality and racism and the trauma that comes with that makes them challenge their capacity to love themselves or make them question their value, which gets in the way of their development. And that women, relatively speaking, don't have that because women are considered more sexually accessible possibly by either white man, quote unquote, that white people are creating a context that's allowing black women to become more professionalized, be more uply mobile, to have a higher economic status than black men. Then they don't want those black men anymore because they're too poor for them. And that's creating that's leading black women away from black men because there's too much of an economic divide that black women don't want to share. So, and some people think that that's why there's more black women in this part. I know there's more black women with white men. That I know. But the explanation...
Right, so the street's kind of lying again because African-American women are not marrying other than African-American men in the large number proportionally
but is it possible,
that our male counterparts are.
But isn't it possible, I hear you, but isn't it possible that even though black women are not running to white men, definitely to the level that men have compared to white women, but isn't it maybe true that because black women are becoming more economically empowered, that they remain single because though they won't go to a white man, they ain't going to be with no broke brother. Somebody put out a song saying, I don't want no scrubs. Remember that song?
Well, and that's my point, Cleo, but I'm with my sisters in this whole conversation. So let me just make that clear.
You don't want no scrubs either, huh?
Right now. Well,
we're going to a break, Monique. Monique,
okay,
we're going to a break, and we'll be back. And I can't wait to hear from you or from Cynthia from North Carolina, who probably will join us as well by phone. But this is Cleo Monago on the Roland Martin Show here on the Empowerment Radio Network. Welcome back, community. We are back. And before the break, Monique was addressing something that she thought was very important, and we want to hear from her. Then we're going to go to our callers. Thank you, Monique. You with us?
Hi, yes, I am. And Cleo, I just had a quick word to counter that word on the street.
Okay.
when we left the break. And here's the thing. There are about 14% of African American males, based on just last year's numbers in 2014, who married other than African American females, and that's twice the number of African American women for the same time period. So it's not that the African American woman is choosing to hook up with white, and those numbers mean not just black men, white women. It's black men and all other racial groupings, and the numbers are higher for Hispanic and Asian than white. But here's what it really is. It's that we are making choices now as women, period, not just African American, and we are choosing marriage for reasons that do not involve financial dependence and do not involve the desire to have children, because another marker, more and more women are doing that by their own. So all of these things are going into the numbers, and that large 60% number doesn't ask the question of those women, which ones actually want to be married. It's just a number of ones who aren't.
Sure. Okay. Context is everything, and that's often missing from these discussions, so I really appreciate that. Cynthia from North Carolina, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hello.
I am. Can you hear me?
I hear you just fine. Sound like you in the backyard somewhere, but I do hear you.
I'm not in the backyard, but thank you for taking my call, because I want to kind of piggyback on the subject that you mentioned about interracial marriages, why black men marry outside of their race based on the beauty standards. And I think another issue involves that as well, because I think a lot of them also marry outside of their race because it's less stress. When they think all black gold diggers, they all are loud, they angry, they like to curse, and they like to fight. And you have women outside of other races basically do the same thing. And some of these women would tell these black guys they're out for money. And it just seems like it doesn't fit with it. They don't even care. But yet, if a black girl say that, she's automatically classified as being a gold digger. So I think that's another reason why some of these black guys, especially high-profile guys that come in on a lot of money, that marry outside of their race, they think it's less stressful with another woman of another race. So they don't want to hear the loudest, the cussing, fighting, and the arguing.
So let me make sure I'm hearing you. And it's not because you're not clear. I want to make sure I understand. You're saying that there's black men who reach beyond black women to other women because they see black women as gold diggers and have and stress and creating stress for them, and they rather go somewhere that's easy.
Correct.
Okay, I want to make sure.
Correct.
That's what you. Okay, interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the truth. It might be interesting, but it's the truth.
But you know what? There's I'm not sure how true it is or is not, but I do know from being a world citizen and someone who travels a lot and sees interaction between all kinds of people that there are fights and perspective differences and attitudes and conflicts between white and black men and women as well. And there are
they don't have a problem with that, Cleo, if it's a woman of another race. It seems like to me they don't have not 1 ounce of an issue with that.
You mean white on white?
Black and white.
No, I'm talking about. I'm talking about
another race.
No, the point I was trying to make, and I apologize for being confusing, is that people, according to you, one of my that some black men are so tired of black women that they look at other women as a panacea, as easier to deal with,
correct.
Right? Okay, so I want to make sure you know that I understood what you said, and I'm saying that I have seen and witnessed, and we all have, if we went outside of our, into other areas of life and seen what's going on there, that there's white women and white men who don't get along, where there's financial problems and where there's conflict as well, but they don't racialize each other. For example, if a white man has a problem with his wife because she shops too much, and that does happen, and vice versa happens, or that she is, quote unquote, gold digging. I mean, there's gold digger websites that are all white, where a white woman is looking for a millionaire. That exists. But they don't. But my point is that unlike us, who've been trained to racialize our whole existence and make everything race-based, they don't race-base themselves and think that what one white woman who might be a gold digger what she's doing represents the whole group. Based on what you're saying, it looks like some black men, if you're saying it's correct, are saying, well, we got 3 or 4 gold diggers, so all black women are gold diggers. I'm going to a white woman.
Correct. And it seems to me they don't have not 1 ounce of a problem if a woman of another race being a gold digger. If it was a black female gold digger, right, they have a problem. I think I'm gonna go with her, man, because she all about money. Right. But yet you're dating a woman outside the race that tell you up front she's all about money, but you don't have an issue with that.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for your call. Appreciate it.
Thank you for taking my call.
Not a problem. Well, Miss Esquire, Monique Presley Esquire, you want to chime in on that?
No.
Well, you don't have to, sister. Okay, but that's an interesting perspective. She said that some brothers look at, and she said it with passion and conviction. Some brothers look at black women as problematic, and when they see a white woman being problematic, she still gets some support. And I think that goes back to the beauty standard thing as well. Frankly, letting them do
right. But you're looking at that small percentage of African American males who are affluent in that way, who maybe she's correct about, but there's not a whole lot of them out there in the first instance. And what I always ask my sisters is, why would you want them anyway? So that's not an Esquire position. That's just a woman-to-woman position. You don't have to have a pool where you can consider, where you've got 25 good men to choose from. You really just need one. And the key is that when you get there, you don't mess it up with that one. And I understand that it takes 2. But again, socioeconomic issues have changed through the past 30 years. The economy, stupid, as we would all keep saying, has changed throughout the past 30 years. Look, years ago, if a woman who was between 24 and 35 required that whoever the man was she married had a job, then it was much easier because there were many more men in that age range, black, white, and different, who had employment. Now, the fact of the matter is the numbers are dramatically lower of males, African American or otherwise, who have employment. And then when you narrow it down to people of color, I mean, we know what those numbers look like. We know what it's like from the economic perspective, and thankfully the employment numbers are coming back up, the jobless numbers are coming back up, but whatever we go through as one area affects every other area. It affects education, it affects marriage and family life, it affects the way that we handle our business, the way that we save, where we live. So none of these numbers can be taken in a vacuum, is my point, Cleo. Sure, and when we look at a big round number like 65%, it's scary. But when we dig in and look at why it is and what it is, I think we can chew on it and then just try to figure out some solutions for the African American woman who actually wants to be married and is doing a great job of managing her own life. I believe that opportunity is out there for her, not the way that it was in times past, but if it's something she desires, then I'm still encouraged by her chances.
Well, hey, that's the light that you were talking about in the beginning of the show, that encouragement, and that there are opportunities and possibilities, and I think that's an important perspective, because one of the things that gets us in trouble is when we do have a resentful, angry, woe is me perspective. That energy leads us to isolation and leads us either to nobody wanting us or the wrong people wanting us. So I think it's important to understand that there's a light and that we have some power here. And I want to, when we come back from the break, and we're not going to the break yet, I'm just kind of give you a warning in terms of where I would like to go. I'd like to talk about solutions. Energy solutions, aesthetic solutions, goal solutions, ways that more sisters can have options, and ways that more brothers can be more focused on making sure they're available to love black women, frankly. I want to have that conversation to the extent that we can before the show is over. But I think that people do have these perspectives that are not really contextually understood. That's why I wanted you to hear, and that's why I wanted you to do what you did, and you did exactly what I expected, which is to bring in statistics, let people know that, look, you're blowing up the wrong thing. What you think is going on here and the portion is not the issue. We have to focus on where the issues and the challenges are so we can resolve this issue, all around in terms of where we're affected. And that's really important.
And that's really the nature of our human existence, Cleo, and I know you know about the psychology of it far better than I do, and you study people, but we're interested in what's hot, what's sexy, what enrages, what gets people's blood boiling, but often those things are outliers.
Yes.
Often those things are not really what is driving the large numbers forward, and it's not the real fundamental or root causes for why things are what they are. And as a woman, African American female with children who's married to an African American male, I'm saying that I'm not in the minority. There's room out there for others to be similar.
So hold that great thought. This is Cleo Monago on the Roland Martin Show here on the Empowerment Radio Network. We look forward to hearing more from you and from our guests. We'll be back. Greetings again, community. We are back. It's Monique Presley and I, legal analyst and attorney and head of the Presley firm. She's a principal there, and she's with us to talk about what's up with black women. And these reports, around 60 to 70% of black women are single. Is it by design or destiny? And we've been talking about it along with some callers in terms of what we think is going on, going from the streets to investigative and research statistics and seeing where we can find some understanding of this issue. But one thing I want to do, which I don't see done enough as we go forward in the show toward the ending at some point, is to identify some problems that are real and some solutions to those problems, so our listeners can have not only some light but some tools to deal with some of these challenges that we reportedly have and actually have. So what's one of those problems or one of those challenges that were raised, Monique, in terms of why there's a large number of black women who are single?
Well, one of the ones that we talked about, and I think it's one that has to be fixed by government and society at large, and that's the incarceration issue, the recidivism issue, the lack of employability after our brothers and sisters are coming out of prison population. But that one is big and heady, Cleo. I think I would prefer to put on my preacher hat, because I'm also an ordained minister, and talk to my sisters about us, because when I talk to women, I say, we have to be the mate that we're seeking. We draw to us what we are. So for those of us who are out there and are single and are educated and are employed and are all of these things that seem like it would be a great match, but our attitude doesn't line up with this great package that we have, or our outlook, our worldview on the possibility of us meeting someone who actually has some integrity and is also employed, and whatever our laundry list of things that we want. And I'm not against the laundry list. Get what you want, but be willing to jump to it. So I guess that's where I would start, because I think that just self-care and self-worth and value and happiness and walking out your days with the kind of positive energy that will draw good things to you is the most important thing that a woman can do on her own to land herself in an abundant, prosperous place. And that's across the board. That's not just with marriage, that's with career, that's with finances, whatever it is. That's something in and of ourselves that we could do, that we don't have to wait for the government to fix the incarceration problem or wait for the president and Congress to fix the employment problem to do something that starts much closer to home.
That's powerful, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of the central themes of what you just said is don't just want something great, be something great.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because sometimes we're looking for a rescue, we're looking for a snatch out, and I'm saying, no, stand up.
Yes.
And accept your circumstances where they are and make them great, and then greatness will be drawn to you.
I agree with that. We have a caller from Nevada named Mike who wants to join us. Let's hear what's up with Mike. Mike, you there?
Hey, how you doing, Dr. Cleo? Thanks for taking my call.
Absolutely.
The guest host and so forth. Just real quickly,
She's
I appreciate
the
way you conducted yourself.
That's what her name is Monique Presley.
Miss Presley.
Yes.
Miss Presley.
Hi.
Dr. Presley. My apologies.
Not a problem.
Dr. Cleo, I appreciated the way you conducted this morning on the interviews. Appreciate that. It was really great. But I'm a black man who happens to live in Nevada. My first wife, she and I met in the military, and we had both come out of the streets, military, and this, that, and the other. Prior to us getting married, she was pregnant, and but over a period of time, things didn't work out. But I was a single parent. I took custody of my son at 7 years old. Got out of the military. Things kind of changed. I was really kind of in the grind trying to figure out my niche in life. Got into IT, and things kind of had a tendency to work out well. And so I ended up in Nevada, of all places. I want to say from the outset, I'm originally from the Bay Area. And for me, this is just me. Ain't nothing like a sister.
Okay.
My wife, we've been married for 6 years now, is Dominican. But you wouldn't know that until she opened her mouth. We just happened to meet in a very fortunate place and things of that nature. But I did not bring her to my home. It was a whole year before I even brought her to my home. I was very protective of my son. My son ended up going to college. He's an attorney. He's an expat, so to speak, living in Spain.
Okay.
And he's just like his dad, and nothing like a sister. A lot of things are going on, particularly in our society, where we are advancing economically, socially, and for a black man, when you start being exposed to certain things, you get into these environments, and you don't see a lot of sisters.
Yeah.
And so you just, that human need or that compassion to want to be with a woman and so forth, without getting into that, you just kind of gravitate to interests and things of that nature. I hear now my youngest son, when he was in college in D.C., he was having a whole lot of difficulty dating sisters. I mean, he's just kind of like he's very cerebral, doesn't talk a lot, and so he ended up dating an Indian young lady, and he would get flack from sisters on campus. He was at Georgetown.
He was what?
He would get a lot of flack from sisters.
Oh, flack. Okay.
Because
he was not with a black woman.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that he didn't want to date. He was just kind of like on a whole other wavelength, but he's just like me. He wanted to do it. He would call home and, Dad, what do I do? I just said, just take your time, man. He's, like I said, he's very cerebral, very, very focused, which is the total polar opposite of his dad. I had to learn that, but he got it early. Yeah. And he kept trying, but being in D.C., if you know the culture and the population and climate and everything going on there, I mean, it's not hard to see black women, but he would get black. So I mean, there are a lot of factors, but I appreciate the dialogue and thank you for allowing me to comment and keep up the good work, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike, and thank you for calling. And I think there's black women who appreciate your mantra, ain't nothing like a sister. I think they'll appreciate that. I think we have Rachel from Chicago. Is Rachel there? Hello? How about Tiffany? Hello, Rachel. Oh, I might be saying it wrong. Is it Rashia? Oh, I guess she hung up. Okay, well, how about Tiffany?
Hello?
Hi, is this Tiffany? Or is this Rashia?
Yes, this is Tiffany.
Hi, Tiffany. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Really well. You have a comment or a question?
Well, I just wanted to comment on something that you all said earlier regarding the whole stay-at-home mom thing. Mm-hmm. And the assumption that if you are a stay-at-home mom, you're uneducated or unlearned, unread, you don't have a world perspective or world view, which is clearly not true. Some women are educated, like myself, mm-hmm. and choose to stay at home with our kids because we feel like that's the best thing awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, I feel like a lot of black women that I run into, they have this thought process. They do want to stay at home with their kids and raise their kids. They know that their kids need them, but they have a fear of falling into this unwanted, unexpected profession, which is actually one of the most important professions that you could ever do, and it's the hardest job you could ever do.
You mean being a home mother?
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard work.
Right, and I agree 100%.
It's hard work to raise responsible, respectful, law-abiding human beings.
Yeah.
Who are going to go on and get educated. So
sure.
I find that statement right there, I feel like there's enough room as far as black women are concerned where you could choose to go back to work or whatever you want to do. We have that right and privilege and that status in this country and abroad.
Well, let's hear from Monique on this.
Downplay it's just not okay.
Let's hear from Monique's perspective of this whole issue that you raised.
Right, and I guess I'm not sure what we lost in the interpretation, but here's the truth. Women who choose to stay at home with their children, I think, are doing one of the most important, critical, and noblest things that they can with their time. I certainly walked away from a law profession to stay at home with mine until they were school age, and it was the best, most wonderful blessing that I could have given myself and, in my mind, my children. What I was saying, our need to marry is that decades
Monique,
ago,
sorry, hold that thought. We're going into break.
Okay.
This is Cleo Monago on the Roland Martin Show here on the Empowerment Radio Network. We'll be back in a moment. We're back. Welcome back, community. Cleo Monago here on the Roland Martin Show here on the Empowerment Radio Network with Monique Presley, who's going to finish her comments, but I have to say that she shocked me with something. First of all, I did not know she was an ordained minister, and we've met before and talked before, particularly on the set of Roland Martin. And what really floored me is that she has a grown child. Have you guys seen Monique Presley? If you haven't seen her, you can go online and you can Google Monique Monique Presley Pressley, and you're going to be in shock like me that she got a grown
No, not grown, Cleo. My children are 9, 8, and 7. They are far from grown. But I thought you said three of them.
Okay.
I do have 3.
Oh, okay.
1, 2, 3. and yes, and people listening can follow me at Monique Presley or go to my website, please. Thank you for mentioning that, Cleo. But I just want to say stay-at-home moms are heroes to me, and I lived and walked that life and walked away from things that I'd worked very hard for in order to do something that was much more important. So anyone who does that, and I think that it takes all the brains, all the smarts, all the patience in the world to get that job done. My point earlier at the top of the hour was this, that women are making more choices now, that many years ago we didn't have as many options, and the construct, the social construct, was that the man would go out and work and the woman would stay in the home. Even if she finished school, she would have children and she would stay and be the homemaker, and that there are still large numbers of men, by the polling, who want that time-past construct, and there are less and less women who are looking for that kind of man and willing to be that kind of woman. So that is one of the things that adds to the tipping points on the numbers of women who are choosing, not for lack of finding a mate, but for lack of finding the appropriate mate, are choosing to stay unmarried.
Well, as I mentioned some moments ago, that in this final segment, I wanted to talk about solutions, but I want to identify challenges so the solutions can match the challenge. And the challenge that you identified at the top of the list was incarceration. And I have some thoughts on that, but my question would be, and I'll respond after you do, what can we do about incarceration? And before you answer that, I want to give a little context, because I would like the answer to have some nuance. the problem of incarceration is often based on behavior and or racism and behavior. And what can we do from a preventative standpoint, particularly mothers of black children, mothers of black sons, but daughters wind up in prison at some point too, black. What can we do to help develop a child who is less at risk to be incarcerated? People.
Cleo, I'm a little confused by your factors, your categories, because to me, the problem with incarceration is the decades long of targeting African American males for more arrests, for more incarceration, for longer prison sentences, and that had everything to do with the color of their skin and the area where they lived and the way that this war on drugs from 80 on forward went forward. So unfortunately, there's little that a mom can do in order to affect those numbers and affect the way that this country has systematically incarcerated the African American male in larger percentages than any other racial group. And I need to breathe through it myself on that one. But what I say to people about knowing your rights, something that we can do to try to keep our children alive, is that we've got to give them that talk where we understand, yes, if you're in a difficult situation with law enforcement, you do have the right to remain silent. Use it. You do have the right to ask for an attorney if it looks like they're going to arrest you. Use it. You do have the right to say that you don't consent to a search or being searched. Use it. But you do all of these things calmly. You do all of these things without fighting back. You do all of these things following every command that they give you, even if it is get down on the ground when you know that they have no right to tell you that. These are all things that we have to teach our children so that they can stay alive, and so that even if they get arrested, we have an opportunity as lawyers for someone like me to come in and fix the situation for them. Then we don't have black men becoming hashtags like we see now, Walter Scott, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, and the list goes on. Those are all circumstances where people could hear me say, when you're in this situation, that's not your time to fight the power and fight for justice. You get out of that situation alive, and then you do something about it.
Well, I want to bring some context to what I said, because I agree with you absolutely what you said regarding racism and the targeting of black men and the criminalization of black men, and how that's extremely relevant to the incarceration problem. But I also mentioned behavior, and you kind of made some reference to that. For example, it's likely, impossible, that when Trayvon Martin was being tracked and followed, he reacted like, would you follow, what's going on here? Why are you following me? And there's some frustration, some intergenerational, uncontextualized frustration that some black men live with because of inheriting the energy of racism and the assault of racism on our ancestors, and things that we inherit that cause some level of dysfunction that we haven't resolved or paid any attention to. And there's a insecure male time. Sometimes because of the attacks on us, we don't feel male enough, and we can be some of us, not all of us, can be combative and defensive without even knowing why, because we come from a culture. My father was like that. I have male cousins in my family that I saw go from baby boys to defensive men who are basically mimicking other defensive men who are acting out in different places that put them at risk. And so that's the behavior part that I'm talking about, where some of us do harbor some frustrations that come from our treatment. Like, I've seen black men who went into the store and were followed and acted out, resulting from the resentment of being followed, and wound up getting arrested.
Right, and acted out in a way that African American males in this country cannot act out and stay alive, even though they're white, count out in that manner and walk away alive and likely not arrested. So the unfortunate part is we're trying to teach people to act counter to the way you would when you're mistreated, when you're singled out, when someone is picking on you and you know it, and our instinct is to fight back. Our instinct is is to be upset, but we are in the position as parents and as leaders to say no until we get the situation straightened out and law enforcement starts seeing people, all people as human, then you as the suspect one, as the one who's being profiled, have to ensure your own safety as best as possible. I tell people you have to say when you're getting stopped, this is not my day to die. And then you mark all your actions from that one plan. Your only plan is staying alive. And it happens to people with education, with no education, in a great neighborhood, in a low socioeconomic area. It's across the board.
Well, a very close friend of mine just texted me a question for you. And we don't have a lot of time, so I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this in the 1 minute, but maybe you can. He told me to ask you, what can a brother do who loves black women, who's not making the kind of money he would like, that can have a supportive relationship, or the support of a relationship? And he don't mean financial support. He means love and affection. This is one of my closest friends, and he loves black women. As far as he's concerned, ain't nothing like a sister, like the brother said earlier. And his question is, what do we who love black women do, who are not making a lot of money but want to be with a sister?
Mm-hmm. Does he want to be with a sister who's making $150,000 a year and owns her own home and her 2 cars and has her vacation spot and has her kids in college? Or does he want to be with a sister situated to him? Because sometimes that affects the chances. I don't even know if that was too raw, but I know I reached it in the time frame.
Yes, you did. You definitely reached it in the time frame, sister. And I'll ask him more about his question and get back with you because of our time frame here.
We'll follow up offline because sometimes that's it. Sometimes you have to grow together. It's not that there's not a sister out there who wouldn't be able to appreciate him, support him, love him, want to grow with him. It's that it's a harder sell for a woman who has worked really hard to get to a certain point in life, because that woman does not want to carry anything in any area. And it's unfortunate. I talked to my sisters about it, but that's kind of where it is, Cleo.
Well, thank you so much, Monique. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's great talking to you and talking with you and hearing you, and I really appreciate it. And thank you for joining me here on the Roland Martin Show. It been a great discussion. It was an interesting discussion earlier with Dr. Umar Johnson, who's building this program for boys. That's his concept and his intent. We'll see what occurs. And in case he's listening, I re-invite him for a public dialogue, to have the courage to have a community dialogue with people who will go beyond his circle and beyond his voice, but a multiple dimensional community of people that are black, to have a rational conversation on that issue of same-gender loving and bisexual people, which the community that we're from tends to have some difficulty with. Also, just rethanking you, Monique, for being here. Monique is the principal at the Presley firm here in Washington, D.C. She's a legal analyst and attorney and an expert on the experience of black women. She's been one all her life. She has a basic all her life, every day of it, and she has an organic PhD in black womenology. And we're glad that she was here, and I'm personally glad and appreciative that she took the time. Thank you so much, sister. And thank you, listening.
Cleo, for having me.
Hey, it was my pleasure.
Roland Martin and his absence.
Yes. Okay, this is the Roland Martin Show with special guest host Cleo Monagle signing off. Thank you for being with us today. I'm sure I'll hear from you again soon. Ashe.